Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank you all for being here today. This day will absolutely go down as a historic one for the people of Oklahoma, in fact, the people of this nation. A day when equality has a brand new light here in Oklahoma. For over a decade, women filed a lawsuit and have waited for this day. They didn't do it alone. In fact, they represented thousands of other Oklahomans who could only dream a few years ago that this day might ever be possible. I was asked 10 years ago, would I ever see marriage equality in this nation in my lifetime? And the answer to that was no. I was certain that it would come, but not a day that I would see. I'm glad to say that I was wrong then, because today we're closer than ever before to a time when all of us are treated with respect, with equality. Already today, we've begun hearing from people talking about activist judges. I can assure you that these judges are not activists, but rather they are individuals who are concerned about the Constitution and the way that it represents all Americans. For those who say that the people have spoken on the issue of marriage equality in Oklahoma, we can say to those folks that the people also spoke when it came to interracial marriage, when it came to women's equality, when it came to slavery. This is a clear-cut example of the fact that our nation was built on a Constitution, and it's the Constitution that speaks louder than any of the people in Oklahoma or our nation. Today is a day that, if I had to sum it up, I could only say that it's surreal. Part of me has a difficult time understanding what's really happened here, because for so many of us, we just didn't know if it would ever come. But today, we have taken an enormous step forward in the march toward equality. And I can say that that would not have been possible were it not for the determination of the plaintiffs, all of those people who have stood beside them. And I'm grateful to say that Cimarron Alliance has stood with them for the last 5 years in solidarity and support. But there's someone who has been a part of this process from the very beginning, and it's a thrill to have him with us today. It's my pleasure to introduce to you the lead attorney on this case, Don Holladay.
It is a deep privilege for me, along with my co-counsel Joe Ty and James Warner. It's a special privilege to have been able to represent these two couples in the struggle that they have had, having marriage in Oklahoma now be a cause for celebration for same-gender couples. It's been special to watch them, to represent them in a long, long trip through many, many years of proceeding to overturn the Oklahoma constitutional ban on same-gender marriage. And today's decision is not only one that brings such joy to them, but they also are the face of hundreds and hundreds of gays and lesbians in this state who will now realize that great promise of the Constitution, and that is the equality of all citizens. And one of those fundamental rights, the fundamental right to marry, the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals has said will apply to all citizens, including gays and lesbians. It's also a chance to celebrate for this whole state and to bring us forward as this country moves on in recognition of the equality and dignity that marriage confers on same-sex couples, and to become a part of the mainstream that is happening across the country. And I think Oklahoma should be proud of itself. These plaintiffs have been supported from day one by organizations like the Cimarron Alliance, but they've also been supported by churches across the state. They've been supported by PFLAG chapters across the state, and they've been supported by ordinary citizens who realize that the Constitution should mean what it says, and that is apply to all citizens equally when it comes to your basic civil rights. And so we celebrate today. We celebrate the confirmation that their struggle has ended, and that they will now be able to celebrate their marriage in this state.
Hi, I'm Joseph Tai, Thai, and I concur with everything that Scott and Don has said. It's been my privilege and honor to be brought into this case and to be part of this historic moment, to represent gays and lesbians, not just the plaintiffs in our case, but across the state, and to advance the cause of freedom and equality across the country. I want to emphasize the bottom line here, and the bottom line is that the outcome today was pro-family, pro-marriage, and pro-Oklahoma. On a constitutional level, we cannot deny the fundamental right to marry to same-sex couples any more than we can deny the fundamental right to marry to interracial couples. On a social level, expanding the right to the institution of marriage to include gay and lesbian couples who are committed and loving will only strengthen families and marriages in Oklahoma, not weaken it. And on a personal level, extending the benefits, the protections, and the honor and dignity of marriage to gay and lesbian couples, to their families, and in particular to their children, will bring them into the full and equal equality that is guaranteed by the Constitution. In the eyes of the law, in the eyes of the Constitution, in the eyes of history, there are no second-class marriages, there are no second-class relationships, there are no second-class families, and we applaud the 10th Circuit for affirming that fundamental bedrock principle of constitutional law. I guess as a footnote, I would call, and I think co-counsel would call on the state of Oklahoma to do the right thing now, and to drop its opposition to Oklahoma families and to equality in Oklahoma.
For those who say that marriage is the foundation of our civilization, of our society, we affirm that thought entirely. In fact, by expanding the definition of marriage, and marriage has been defined and redefined many, many times in history, but by this expansion, as Joe pointed out, we have an opportunity to strengthen in very powerful ways, not just individual families, but the communities in which they live and the state that they call home.